gotta leave your money behind you. Raise your hand to...
Welcome back to another episode of Gimme Some Truth, or International Edition, Dame la Verdad, as it's been known as well. Dites-moi la vérité. Today we're going to be catching up with Stan Farmer. I'm Keith Poniwaz. We're both financial advisors here at Walkner Condon. Stan keeps abreast of information pertaining to Portugal, and Portugal has been one of our more popular destinations for retirees and expats, and one of the programs expats have availed themselves of, Stan, is the NHR program, which stands for non-habitual resident, which is kind of a misnomer, right?
Because you have to be a tax resident to apply for it.
Yep.
But other than that, it's perfect name.
Yeah. And so it's a chance for Americans or others to move to Portugal and kind of with some financial requirements and some moves on their part, live there fairly easily, get a visa, get access to their healthcare system, all of that. So Stan, what's going on in Portugal? What's happening?
Well, as you intimated, NHR was put into effect in 2009, and I guess we'll just have to say it's been a good run. It's been such a good run that that Americans, Aussies, Brits, French, people from around the world, not just Americans, but expats everywhere looking for a retirement destination have flocked to Portugal in record numbers. And it's been such a hit that Portugal has progressively become a lot more expensive to live. In particular, the housing market has entered into what has been described as a crisis in the country. Rents, home prices skyrocketing, the Portuguese population unhappy to see that they were getting priced out of their own neighborhoods. It started to become a bone of contention over the last couple of years. And today, or I should say last week, Prime Minister Costa caved into the public sentiment that was expressed by actual organized protests throughout the country the weekend before he went on television. And in a television interview, he announced that in 2024, the NHR program would be coming to an end.
And this isn't totally unforeseen, because there had been announcements, and we'd published a little bit about how the program was changing, right? And I think one of the big differences between Portugal's program and Italy's and so on, originally there were no geographic restrictions. You could go wherever you wanted within Portugal, right? And that was one of the changes that had been announced, right?
No, technically we have to realize that NHR is a tax program, right? And then programs in terms of how you get into the country and become a tax resident, it's really kind of an immigration thing. So I see them as two separate pieces.
But for instance, to get the tax advantages in Italy, you have to move to certain regions.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about the Portuguese program.
Yeah, and I'm saying that was different, and the NHR, the restrictions they started putting on, that you had to buy property in certain areas or invest in certain areas was the talk, rather than anywhere in Portugal that you couldn't.
Well, okay, so what Portugal did earlier in the year was get rid of the golden visa as a method to acquire the residence, that you couldn't purchase a residential property to qualify for a golden visa that got you in the country, right? So that was the first indication, and certainly an intimation, that higher home prices had become a political issue, right? That President Costa and his Socialist Party would have to contend with a lot of discontentment over the real estate scene in Portugal. So he, back in, I believe it was February, March, announced that, or they proposed that they get rid of the the Golden Visa program for using a residence to acquire access to residency in the country. You could still do the D7 visa, which was the more popular route to take, maybe a little more paperwork involved, but there were, didn't really stop the flow of immigration. And at the heart of the housing crisis has simply been the influx of fairly wealthy foreign people coming into the country and pricing up housing and driving up rents. So this, I guess it's not really a surprise, but I would note that I'm a little surprised, because I would note that when asked about NHR at the time that the Golden Visa was modified, right, at the time that they took away one particular popular access for rich people to get into Portugal, it was asked about the NHR program, and he said, well, we can't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. That's more or less what he said. So, there was at least an indication only a few months back that it was a sacred cow, right? That they realized that it had done a lot of, it had done, or a golden goose, any animal metaphor that you want, but there was indication that there was a realization that the influx to the economy outweighed the bad elements that it would have in terms of housing inflation, right? Well, I guess organized protests and continuing negative coverage about how difficult it was for everyday hardworking Portuguese people to make rent and get by and stay in the neighborhoods that they'd grown up in, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I guess it came to a head, and so the goose that laid the golden egg 6 months earlier became tax injustice.
6 months later, we should say, yeah.
Yes.
And so now what this means is that you're not going to be able to, with the restrictions on the visas, with the restrictions now on the NHR, the advantage to moving there, if you can get a visa, has been severely restricted. What does it mean if you're already in the country?
The good news is that he made it clear. And again, remember, this is an interview. This is him talking out loud. This has got a ways to go before we get all the details, of course, right?
And this is not actual legislation. This
right,
is
exactly.
an indication of legislation.
You would think that the legislation would have a little more details on when it becomes effective and how that's all going to go. But one thing that appears to be clear is that ending the program means that you will no longer be able to apply for the first time for the program. And the non-habitual resident status lasts for 10 years of your first 10 years of tax residency. Or I should say 10 years period from when you first had tax residency and applied for it. So you can fall in and out of the country, but you've still only got that 10-year period. You don't get 10 years of tax residency, which you might carry out into years 13, 14 because you were gone for a period of time. It's 10 years. So if you apply in 2023, it's over in 2032. So those people are grandfathered. They can theoretically.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's a big asterisk over all of this. Is that this was just something that was uttered in an interview on TV.
And so the push maybe to kind of get yourself there if you're thinking about it sooner rather than later, or is that not going to be a possibility?
I mean, I honestly think, this also comes at a time when there's talk that the immigration authority is merging with some other unit, and the visa process, this is the dish that I get from people that I talk to all the time, right? The actual people trying to get in the country. And they're frustrated because it's taking a little extra long right now. But I would say that as long as that doesn't come to a complete standstill, 2024 could turn into a huge influx of people trying to get in before. Okay, I think one of the challenges here again is to understand the difference between immigration policy and tax policy. So you have to apply for NHR in a window of time at the beginning of the year after you acquired tax residency, right? So it's for the year you're about to file for taxes, and you have to do it in that window of time. So what does it mean it's going to end in 2024? I mean, technically, if that means you can't apply for NHR after 2024, well, the window, that means that you had to have been a tax resident in 2023, right? Mm-hmm. If it means that you have to be a tax resident in 2024 to apply for NHR, you actually would apply in 2025. Mm-hmm. That's different. That means that 2024 could become a gigantic year for immigration, and the people I talked to had indicated, people on the tax and immigration front had indicated that 2024 was going to shatter the record that this year had set for Americans moving to Portugal. So, we'll have to wait and see what this means. If I were very late in this process and the immigration authority wasn't taking my phone calls or wasn't getting me back, wasn't getting me on the schedule, I might be a little nervous, right? But I wouldn't abandon ship at this time. If I was casually interested in forum shopping for a place to live, in the next year or two, would I cross Portugal off the list? Well, I mean, if I'm really tax sensitive and, there's a lot of uncertainty here, maybe, right? So, I mean, hopefully we get some clarification in the near term, because there are thousands of people that are, trying to navigate the situation. And this was a pretty big curveball,
So in terms of actionable guidance for people thinking to moving to Portugal, it's a little bit of make sure you're paying particular attention, follow up with, if you've got an immigration attorney, something like that, reach out to them, follow up with them, make sure you've got those particular ducks in a row ready to go. Yeah. Because I do imagine as well, part of the delay comes from this increasing amount of people applying. They probably haven't added all that much more staff to the immigration.
It's a bureaucracy. So I wouldn't be surprised, knowing Portuguese bureaucracy as I do, that if the line gets long, it's time to take lunch, right? Yeah. Coffee break.
Yeah. Well timed. Yeah. It's So related to this a little bit, the program has been in effect through 2009. We've seen an increase in this. What do you attribute the rapid growth of it to COVID in particular? Was it just people started hearing about it? What was? Yeah, I mean, what was the domino effect, or what caused this to snowball to the point that they're saying, hey, there are too many Americans showing up. Ironically, given our own, debates about immigration here in the United States, there's now a country where apparently Americans aren't wanted.
Right. Hard to believe, right? That's a really interesting question, and I'm going to sort of try to answer it. I think it was a combination of the two things, but there's no doubt in my mind that COVID-19 exacerbated the migration to Portugal in a big way, right? So Portugal was, they've been very proactive with their immigration and trying to get the people that they want to get into the country. And they saw this as an opportunity. They saw this digital nomad trend, and they got on it. And they had a special, visa program for it. And, they got themselves out there in front of this. And, COVID brought on, the Great Resignation, right? people started to think, okay, my home in Silicon Valley, my home in the Bay Area, is worth a fortune. Like it's appreciated in value dramatically. California is becoming a kind of a high tax place to be anyway, right? And now, like I can go do my coding wherever I want, right? And Portugal is a place where, hey, I can do my work on my laptop. I can go to the beach. I can go spend weekends. I can go to Barcelona if I want. I could do cool things, and it'd be like the equivalence of going to Vegas. I mean, just like I'll go to Monaco instead, right? Kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, I really think that it was that, but there's no doubt in my mind that in America, like there's places where few people go and it's seldom talked about. But once something starts to get a little popular, it really gets talked about. So there's no doubt that there's this snowball effect as well of just, hey, Portugal. I've been hearing a lot about it lately, and people start looking into it, because, even, NHR came around in 2009. Were Americans flocking to Portugal in 2012? No, right? It took a while. But once it caught on, it really spiraled.
No, I think, and one of the things as well that people looked at, and California was a major driver because then you get out of state taxes, but we've seen people from all over because in COVID you had a major, increase in the value of your real estate, and all of a sudden, it became easier to kind of move up that, not just be a digital nomad, but move up your retirement date. Right? If you were going to retire at 65, all of a sudden you've got extra value in your home. You can move up that retirement date. And then a place like Portugal with, the national insurance program, nationalized medicine, becomes more...
Retiring early in the United States is expensive.
Yeah.
And healthcare plays a large role. Yeah.
Becomes more attractive.
Yeah.
And then you look at, I can buy how much in Portugal
right.
early on. Even now, one of the things that I'm sure people... from big cities in the United States, they look at real estate prices in Lisbon or wherever and compare it to where they are, and they go, oh, my gosh, this is cheap. Well,
Yeah, I mean, if you're moving from Madison, maybe not so much, right?
Yeah. But, you're moving from Chicago, San Francisco, L.A., something like that. Yeah, big cities.
Exactly.
You can get a lot of bang for the buck. Even, I think, in Madison, people are probably looking at living on the beach, and they go, it's only how much? And the beach doesn't, freeze for 6 months a year. But, I think right now where we are is people should be aware that NHR is ending. Current residents of Portugal should be of the sense that they're going to get likely grandfathered in from the indications, though,
yes,
again, it's Portuguese legislation. We don't know how the sausage is going to be made there. And that if they're not, necessarily grandfathered in, or if the term of NHR adjusts, they should reach out and listen to, you should also be listening to our podcast, following ours, because that may change your financial planning strategies. Over
the
time.
Socialists have been getting pressure from the communists in Portugal, so who knows what that might lead to? Mischief, I think.
California taxes become a lot more appealing. If you get that jump up in your tax rate in Portugal, because it starts pretty high tax rate, pretty low in the income scale. So that's that sort of thing. If you're in the process, I think, of going to Portugal or applying for a visa or, looking at NHR, two things. One, if you're already in that process, you should make sure that everything is dotted, all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that your professionals that are working on it for you are moving you along. And if you haven't engaged a professional, if you're trying to do it on your own, it may be a good time to think about that, just to expedite the process. And then if you're shopping for countries, further off, 2025, 2026, whatever, you may want to go back and listen to some of our old podcasts where we talk about alternate destinations that can be
Right.
tax friendly for
Oh, yeah.
Americans.
Yeah, I mean, remember that out there that Italy and Greece tried to copycat it. They have copycat NHR, right? There are differences. We discuss it in our piece on that. France could be income tax friendly. One thing that Portugal still has going
and cap
for it,
gains tax friendly.
and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Pensions, all of that. Yeah.
absolutely. One thing that one thing that made Portugal interesting beyond income tax breaks and immigration concessions, if you will, was the fact that they had legal reform. They got rid of death taxes, right? So you have to look at lots of different things, but when it comes time to retire, people are fixated on my nest egg lasting my life. Maybe not in what happens after I die, but it matters. I mean, I was reading a piece and a gentleman from Blevins Franks, which is like a legal accounting firm, if you will, in the UK. And the UK has always been, Portugal's always been important to UK expats. He made the observation that he didn't think that getting rid of NHR would change that much because they still didn't have death taxes. So, I mean, the Brits have to worry about death taxes more than Americans generally do. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And of course, when you're, considering different countries, this is just a reminder that there's more than, climate, income tax rates to think about. There's how does this affect my estate planning? Would I need to make some changes? Is it going to muck up my plans for little Joey to, inherit my business or, whatever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's always more complicated and depending on what you're looking at, various jurisdictions. And then from a top-down standpoint, you always look at it from, the rumors of certain countries. I mean, and one of the things I'll say about the Portugal program, one of the big advantages was it was pretty simple to understand.
Yeah. I mean, there weren't like a lot of like little extra rules written into it. Like I think the Italian plan is, by contrast, way more complicated.
No, yeah, the Italian plan, it reminds you of the old expression about is it a donkey, a horse assembled by committee, or a camel as a horse assembled by committee? I forget which one it is. I mean, the Italian one is very complicated, lots of rules and things in place, so that that's partially why you have immigration advisors, financial planners on your team to help think about those things. But I think that was one of the advantages of the Portugal, and I think it's some sense too bad that it's going away, but there are other places, and I think a lot of places are going through what Portugal is going through. There's because of the change. I mean, Madison's real estate market sees it a little bit here locally. People are leaving the coasts and they can work wherever, and they're like, oh, that's an appealing destination. My brother lives in Bozeman, Montana. It's been a huge problem there, right? An influx of people because they want to live in the mountains. So I think, what we're seeing with Portugal is not a unique phenomenon. The difference is they had all the, they had rolled out the red carpet and now they're rolling it back up.
It's going to be interesting to see what transpires before it actually shutters, right? Because on the one hand, yes, it's not debatable that Portugal's gotten more expensive as it's gotten more popular, right? And not just Lisbon, but like rural areas have started to fill up. Not necessarily a bad thing for those areas, but one interesting factoid that I stumbled upon was that if you look at the census population of Portugal at the time they enacted NHR and now, population has not increased, right? So it's this demographic challenge that Japan has, Europe has, and to a lesser extent, China has, right? And to a lesser extent, the United States was going to have to deal with.
Yeah, well, and I think that in particular is one of the challenges there as well is, the people that are getting most affected by these rent increases, these price increases in buying a home, and maybe haven't yet seen the benefits of the increase. They're not selling their homes and, that sort of thing. Are young people, and Portugal has had a young people flight, for a number of years. So a lot of kind of interesting demographic issues. Hopefully, more there to consider. We thank you for listening today on Give Me Some Truth International, Dame la Verdad. These Portugal podcasts always prove popular, but Stan, what can they do to make them more popular?
Well, if you like the content that you get here on Dame la Verdad, Give Me Some Truth for Expats, be sure to subscribe to our channel and smash the like button.
All right.
And feel free to make comments in the comment section as well.
Yeah, we
love
always
to hear from you.
appreciate that. Yeah. So thanks for your time and have a good rest of your day.
Walkner Condon Financial Advisors is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Registration with the SEC does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The opinions expressed by the participants of this podcast are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Walkner Condon Financial Advisors. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. Thanks for listening, and for further information, please visit WalknerCondon.com.